Hello and welcome back to the Football Hipsters podcast, or kind of #TFHP Euros, because that's what we're here to discuss. It's the Football Hipsters Roundtable. That's what we've decided to call it. We aren't knights, but nevertheless, we shall talk about some football action from the European Championships of this summer just gone by in way of a little special. We've given you a week off from us, but we missed you all, so we're back again. I am your host, Kris, as usual, and I've got three guests with me this evening. I first of all have returning for, I think it's his third or fourth time now. He's becoming a regular. It's French Football Weekly's resident correspondent. It's Rich Allen. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much for coming back to us again. And I've also got another man who's very familiar to this parish, and it's our journalist friend and indeed close pal of a WhatsApp group. It's Mr. Simon Collings. Evening, Simon.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
All good, thank you, my friend, and welcome back from your holiday just before you jet off again. So good to have you. And last but not least, now unfortunately, Ali is not able to join us tonight, and he does send his apologies, and he will make it up to us, he promises. But he's had a family illness, so he's not able to be with us tonight. So we've scraped the bottom of the barrel. And unfortunately, all we could find was John. No, I'm only joking. We've got John with us, so thank you very much for stepping in, John. And how are you, sir?
I'm all right. I'll apologise to the listeners. I'm terrible. I'm not as good as Ali, so that has really sunk the bar quite low.
That's not true, John. At least 3 listeners like you.
That is true. Yeah.
You know, and we've only got about 12. So I mean, that's good. Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. We're just going to crack straight on, and what we're going to do on tonight's podcast, we'll have a bit of a roundtable, a bit of a little chit chat for you, lovely listeners. We're going to talk a little bit about the tournament, and then we're going to pick our teams of the tournament by way of kind of a voting system between us all. So let's start off with some initial thoughts. I'm going to start with Simon, because Simon, you were at the epicentre of the Euros. You covered a couple of the camps while you were out there. I believe it was Croatia, Turkey, and Switzerland. So, what sort of atmosphere was it for you, sort of working out there? How was the French hospitality? What kind of things did you pick on for the teams? And did you enjoy the tournament when you were covering it?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I was there for 2 weeks, based in Nice and Marseille, so did 7 games down there. So I was there for the England-Russia game, which was obviously quite an interesting spectacle from everything that was involved in it, and being my first ever tournament match was a bit of a baptism of fire. But I think from there, that was, for me, the only real dark side of the tournament was those opening sort of few days with England fans and the French police and then the Russians. But I think from there, the French very much got behind the tournament, partly because, you know, their side was doing so well. I know it was something that Deschamps said he didn't really want to compare it to 98 or 2000, but it had that similar feel, whereas the tournament grew, certainly being there for the France-Albania game, which was their second match and a very frustrating game, and they got those late goals with Payet and Griezmann, that you felt as if the country was getting involved, and the hospitality to the fans was fantastic, and being in Nice and Marseille, and particularly there were days where we had the Belgium and Sweden fans all together mingling, Northern Ireland and Poland fans. You know, everyone got together and would mingle in the fan zones and at the matches, and it was a very, very good atmosphere. And certainly down on the south coast with the nice weather and lots of drink, all the fans had a brilliant time. I'm sure as a tournament we'll get onto it, whether it was the greatest tournament, but I think for the fans who travelled there and went around the country, I think the French really did open their arms to them.
Yeah, it's definitely a good atmosphere. You, as you say, really came across on the live broadcast, and the atmospheres for some games were fantastic, as well as the French supporters getting involved with the other teams. So it's good to see, and we will come back to you again, as I say, in a second on some individual teams. But Rich, from your point of view, sort of covering things as you do, all things French, obviously you would have had a very close eye on the French team, and we did the interview with yourself and Lana during the tournament, and it's a bit of a mixed bag from France. What's been the fallout kind of since? Obviously, we know that the final didn't go their way, and how do you feel the tournament will be looked back on by the French public?
Well, it was interesting actually that Simon touched upon what Deschamps was saying about the 90, well, certainly 98. The similarities were quite striking at times, albeit ultimately not the same final success. But you had a French public who were slightly cautious to the point of slightly pessimistic about their side's chances with everything that had gone on with injuries, players not picked for various reasons. Similar attitude that was the case leading into '98. So to get that initial win, and in the manner that the goal was scored, was just that was the thing. That was the thing that just clicked the French fans over. The support then was behind the team. There was a sort of big collective sigh of relief, I think, both from the players, Deschamps, through to the fans. And I think that then kicked on the support for the team. And that really did carry on through. They really did get back behind their team. Players, okay, they may not agree that they should be in the side, Giroud being the most obvious one. He suffered quite a significant amount of booing in pre-tournament friendlies, but he got the opening goal of the tournament. They got behind the players, they got behind the squad. I think coming out of this tournament, there was huge disappointment that they couldn't just finish off Portugal when perhaps they arguably should have done in the final. But I think over that initial disappointment, there's a feeling of actually, this has been a successful tournament for France. They got to the final. Quite a lot of people who were, supporting France didn't expect that. I'd had them down as semi-finalists initially. So to beat the world champions, to get to the final, I think you have to look at that as a successful tournament for France.
Yeah, success in mixed degrees from some people, I'm sure. John, from your perspective, obviously you were part of the team with myself doing sort of daily podcasts. We covered sort of so many different games. Would you describe the tournament as quite defensive and almost, we'll touch on it later on, the format of the tournament? Do you think that maybe that might have affected teams, sort of how they set up, and the fact they didn't really go for games maybe led to a few slightly dull games? Would that be fair based on what you saw?
I don't know if they necessarily set up defences. I think obviously we'll get into the specifics of the change of the format, but just because you had some sort of smaller nations in the tournament that wouldn't normally be there, they're naturally going to come in against the fancy teams of the bigger nations and whatever, and sit back and be slightly more defensive. So I think that attributed to that. I don't think it was the best tournament ever. Certainly of other Euros I've seen from the past. I think why maybe people will label it more defensive is because the defenders at this tournament all performed very well. What I actually thought it was a lack of quality in front of goal. There was quite a lot of teams creating chances. France were one, made a lot of chances, did score quite a few goals in the tournament, but I think they could have scored more. Germany the same, they had a similar problem. So it was more than anything. It seemed to be like a lack of real quality strikers to me. And I think the sort of surprise from the smaller nations was how well they could do. So perhaps the bigger teams were over fancied to a certain degree, but I don't think it definitely wasn't the greatest tournament ever, and I think there was certainly some disappointment on the performances of the kind of the hyped teams pre-tournament.
I think actually there's a good point there about the lack of quality going forward. I think there was a distinct lack of an ability in so many of the sides, and even the better sides, a real inability to break down those teams that came out as an organised defensive system. You saw that in the approach at times as to how Iceland played. You could argue that's exactly how Portugal played in the final. They obviously lost Ronaldo early, so they were going to have to adapt their ways. But there was so many times in that tournament that I saw teams unable to break down an organised defensive setup from other sides. So I think that's a point I think to take forward, and certainly for teams that want to progress to that next level, France perhaps being one of those. That's something that they're going to have to work on, because that could be a tactic I think we're going to see more and more of.
All very fair points, and as you say, this change of format almost made teams second guess: do we change our systems? Do we not? And it's been quite interesting to see how teams have progressed. And on that very note, I want to ask you all, maybe if you pick one each here, a team that really took you by surprise in this tournament. Obviously, I'm sure the regular names are going to come out, but Simon, let's start with you, because I say you were close to a couple of teams. were there any teams that surprised you both positively or negatively in this tournament?
I mean, I was most surprised. I mean, the team I saw the most in the end, covering them and working around their matches, was Poland, and ended up doing a feature on them after sort of the last 16, just because they'd surprised. I think a few people had sort of backed them as vague dark horses, but they'd never got to the knockout stages of European Championships. They'd been hosts 4 years ago, obviously alongside Ukraine, and the contrast between where Polish football had gone and Ukrainian football had gone, is drastic. I know Ukraine has got a lot of problems, obviously, in the country, and that's affecting the domestic football. But I mean, the first Poland game was that Northern Ireland game. I remember coming away from that, and Krychowiak looked fantastic. I know a lot of you guys on the pod said he's a very good player, and you could understand completely all the hype around him. He controlled that game completely. But then someone like Kaputska, playing on that left-hand side that no one had ever heard of, just burst onto that tournament and was fantastic. And on the right-hand side, Błaszczykowski and Piszczek, and even up front, I know he got a lot of criticism, Lewandowski, but when you're viewing the whole game and you watched him, he sacrificed a lot for that team. A lot of his movement was dragging players out of position, and he knew that he was essentially going to be double marked, and Poland knew it themselves. And the way they set up was that he made the space for Milik, and unfortunately, perhaps if he had his shooting boots on for the time he was in France, and they might have done better. But they were the team that really impressed me, and the one I've come away from thinking that if they keep developing young players, then they can perhaps progress as a side that can do something at major tournaments.
It definitely impressed me, I must admit, and they were a decent side. I think maybe if they'd got sort of Lewandowski, as you say, works so tirelessly, you almost wanted him to be on the end of some of those chances that Milik failed to take. But some certain building blocks for the future, I think it's fair to say. Same question to you, Rich. Teams that sort of took you by surprise. Definitely pick somebody out that was negative for you, because I like a bit of negativity.
No, of course, no. I was just about to. Funnily enough, it might be an obvious one, but for me it was England. I haven't been a particularly big England supporter for quite a number of years, but going into this tournament, I genuinely thought, and I think I've probably gone on record somewhere if people care to look, that I genuinely thought England could do very, very well in this tournament, because so many of the other big teams were in a little bit of a limbo situation. England seemed to have a lot of quality young players, that sprinkling of experience that you need. Everyone seemed to be playing pretty well. And actually, that game against Russia, things started well. I thought, actually, England played quite well in that Russia game, and then just didn't finish them off, and then paid the price. And the minute that pretty much last-minute goal went in against Russia, it seemed to be tournament over for them. Yes, they got the late winner over Wales, but that just seemed to knock them. It just seemed to knock them completely. Any confidence they had just seemed to go, as far as I was concerned. And I don't know. I just think this was a big opportunity for England, and they completely blew it. Not once really in that Iceland game did they actually look genuinely like they were going to win it. Yes, they had a lot of possession. Yes, they might have had chances, but really there was never a feeling that they had that quality, that confidence to go ahead and put Iceland away. So for me, it's without a doubt biggest disappointment of that tournament was England.
Hard to disagree, and we will touch on England again in a second. But it wouldn't be fair not to give John, who famous for something involving cornflakes. I'll leave it there. John, have you got anybody that was either a negative or a positive that you'd particularly like to praise or pee over?
Well, I won't go into too much detail, but like the obvious ones for big praise was obviously Iceland and Wales. I thought both those teams were superb. I thought Northern Ireland as well were fantastic. They had one of the real surprises in the tournament for me. Like Jeff Hendrick was amazing in the games he played. I thought he was great. But the negatives, it was weird because we obviously talked about the sort of change of format. That all the teams that you expected to do things just didn't turn up. I know Spain didn't have a particularly good World Cup previously, but you look at the list of their players and they were just really poor throughout the entire tournament. I don't think they had a particularly good game really throughout it. And when you've got that much talent in your squad, that is so disappointing. Austria the same, who were hyped up so much before the tournament. I know everyone says, it's just their big player, David Alaba, but they've got a lot of good players in that squad who just didn't show up. But the one that probably stood out the most for me, and it's probably more down to my ignorance of not knowing enough of the players, enough about them, was Hungary. Okay, they didn't, progress particularly far, but I thought they played with a really good attitude. They were always trying to attack when they could. They were inventive in their play, full of energy, and they had some really good young talent there. So they were the real standouts for me. But yeah, I mean, like Rich said, there was not just England, but there were so many teams that were coming into the tournament, and their players were all in really good form, who just completely just bombed and really, really underperformed.
Yeah, same can be said for a lot of superstar names as well, and we will touch on some players when we pick our team of the tournament. But just before we transition into that discussion, I just want to get all of your thoughts. Obviously, we are all English or British, if you will, on this pod tonight. So I must admit, I'm much like Rich. I don't really follow England greatly, and I don't think you do either, John. But either way, I think it'd be only fair to maybe just cast our eye over what England need to do to improve, and who we maybe see as a potential future manager. Rich, I'll start with you. Would you like to see England go in a different direction? Is it a foreign coach? Is it a rip up the plan start again? Or is it just simply that we should be picking players in form, not players on reputation?
Well, for starters, on the coach, you pick the best coach. Who whatever nationality he is, you pick the best coach. In terms of players, well, I think the balance of the squad is actually, there's not a great deal wrong. Yeah, perhaps there's some players that are getting towards the end of their careers that you may just have to cut off and look at replacing them. But a large part of that squad will be there for a number of years. They have that quality. We see it week in, week out in the Premiership. It's just you needing that someone in charge at the national level to come in, bring them together and get those same performances out of them. Who I'd look to put in charge, I would probably look at a guy that a lot of people have linked with the role. I'd probably look at Klinsmann. You look at what he did at Germany and helped put in place with Germany. You look at what he's done with the US. He's done a pretty good job with the US. I think you come in. He's evidently, you look at his managerial CV, which is not huge, but he doesn't seem to like a long-term project. So you bring him in. You perhaps put him on a 2-year contract to the World Cup. What you have then behind the scenes, I know he turned down the job on a full-time basis, but you have behind the scenes then is Gareth Southgate shadowing him, basically, learning from him, so that Klinsmann takes us up to the World Cup. Whatever happens at the World Cup happens at the World Cup. Southgate then comes in after that World Cup to then take them forward. He's had the learning with the under-21s, so he's had that that international experience to a minor degree. He'll have had 2 years then shadowing Klinsmann at the senior level. Should then make him an ideal candidate then sort of post World Cup to take England forward.
It's definitely one for the hipsters, and I'm kind of with you. I must admit, I think that would be a good pick. But John, what's your thoughts on England as a whole? I mean, again, sort of thoughts on a change of manager, and are you on board with the idea of what we do every tournament of rip the book up and start again, or do you want to see a more sensible approach?
Well, someone would have to write the book first, because no one has written it as far as I'm aware. They just keep going to different countries and saying, can we borrow yours, and not do it properly. The majority of the people at the FA, I can't remember the guy's name, but one of the guys who came out after Roy Hodgson was, or resigned, parted ways, however you want to put it, with the England job, said, I'm not a football man, but he's one of 3 people that has the decision of picking who the next England manager is. It just makes no sense whatsoever. I'm, unlike Rich, I'm not convinced by Klinsmann, personally. I don't have anything against a foreign manager. That makes no difference, no odds to me. I do agree, I think you get the best manager available. I don't actually think Klinsmann is as good a manager as people think, just from watching USA and some of the tactics. they're not really there. I know the level of the quality of players they've got is different, but I'm not completely convinced by him. And also weirdly Gareth Southgate, but that's probably more because I know people who have done coaching sessions with him and have told me some very, very strange stories about his coaching techniques that do sound very.
You can't just leave that hanging. We need at least one. Come on.
Well, no, it was
something
just,
not libelous.
It was just like a youth sort of development training thing, and it was trying to teach players how to switch play. So it was attack versus defence basically, and how to switch play to the other side to try and get down one flank and get the ball in the box, that kind of thing. And they basically the attacking team weren't doing it very well, and the guy who was getting on the end of the crosses when they did eventually come in wasn't finishing or taking his chances, and it wasn't down to bad luck or anything else, it was poor technique. And instead of explaining to the kid that he's got poor technique and he's hitting the ball in the wrong places, he's not putting his head over the ball or shaping, the body position, everything else is wrong, he's just saying, no, that's fine, come on, clap, go on, keep going, rather than actually explaining fundamentals as to how your technique is completely wrong and you need to change it. And I don't mean to say you do it in a derogatory way and really drag them down in front of everyone, but taking someone aside and saying, no, you need to do it this way. And then after that, he then took over from the kid who was switching the ball and just was hitting the ball 50 yards to the left and to the right and showing off how good he is at football, rather than actually coaching. Now, I'm not a football coach, don't get me wrong, but that sounds like terrible coaching to me. Anyway, that's why
getting back on the pitch and replacing Rooney then.
that to be fair is a good shout, because apparently he was hitting those balls very well. So,
there you go.
Yeah, but that's only just obviously from personal stories I've heard. But it's weird, the whole England thing. I agree with Rich. I think the squad's good. They've got good players that they perform week in, week out in the Premier League. It's a fairly young squad. I didn't understand the Rooney in midfield thing. That didn't make sense to me. I've always thought of Rooney, probably best position is off of the striker, sort of number 10 role, because yes, he can find all those balls, those passes, but he's so good in the box and around the box, then there's no point not to have him there. Some of the selections were a little bit odd, like Jack Wilshere. I didn't think that was particularly the right thing. I do think he's the one midfielder who is very different to the rest, but he didn't look fit to me, so I thought that was the wrong decision. But yeah, they just need to just say, look, we are English footballers play football a certain way in a certain style. They only play in the Premier League. They don't play in other countries, which is to their detriment. And if they're not going to do that, then you need to play at the international level the way they do in the Premier League. They need to play at that pace, with that intensity, with that physicality. Yes, international football is refereed slightly in a different way, and sometimes you can't get away with that. But if that's the only way they can play football, then you need to do it. And they just haven't had a manager who would do that. And I know Sam Allardyce has been linked a lot with the job, and some people have sort of poo-pooed it and said, oh, it would be long ball football and everything else. Sam Allardyce isn't a bad manager. The reason that he has that reputation is because he's very good at his job of keeping teams in the Premier League. West Ham wouldn't be in the position they're in now, and being able to be at this brand new stadium and possibly challenging for spots in Europe if it wasn't for Sam Allardyce keeping him in place in the first place. He knows what he's doing. He was one of the first English managers to embrace sports science. A thing that sort of Arsene Wenger and was one of the first foreign managers bringing into the Premier League. So I think the whole negativity around the English style of football is something you should actually embrace and play. Some of the most exciting England teams I watched was sort of Euro '96 and Italia '90, and they were very English teams. What's wrong with playing two up front, one big man, one little man? No one complained when Bonucci hit a 60-yard ball to Giaccherini and he took one touch and put it in. That wasn't called long ball football, was it? That was called a beautiful pass. If an English player does it, it's dreadful. Just do what you're good at and get on with it. All the teams in this tournament, the smaller ones who haven't got the fancied superstar players, what did they do? They did the basics, the fundamentals, they got on with it, and they've gotten really, really far. If you can't do that first, don't try and be Spain or France or Italy. Do what you're good at, and then you'll get somewhere.
Hard to argue with any of that, I have to say. And
Simon's going to rip me apart now.
From your standpoint of your job, obviously you will know a little bit about what's being reported, what's being talked about in the press at the moment. Is it your sort of understanding that Allardyce is that figure that they want? Is there a lot of change afoot, or do you think it's as straightforward as get Allardyce in and try and start again? What's your kind of views from what you hear on work-based things?
I mean, I'm not too sure with it. It's been quite a delay considering, England have been out of the tournament for about a month or so now, pretty much, and there's been no decision made. They've obviously spoken to a lot of people. Allardyce, left his training camp with Sunderland to go have talks. Klinsmann, as Oliver Bierhoff revealed, he'd had talks. But the trouble with the FA is that you get the feeling almost that they need to decide how they want England to play, and then you pick the manager. And it felt a lot with Hodgson that they just picked Hodgson, and there was no, style of play for England. If sat down at the end of the Euros and someone said to me, what style of football do England play? I probably couldn't explain it to them. And you could with the likes of Italy, Germany, Spain, France. You could talk about their style of play. With England, I was happy with the squad they picked, but tactically, it felt that Hodgson, he didn't play to any of his players' strengths. He didn't play a 4-4-2 so Vardy could play up front in a pair. He didn't play a 4-1-1 so that Kane and Ali could play together as a pair. Ali played too deep. He played Rooney in midfield when, as we saw Mourinho in his opening press conference said, Wayne Rooney's never a number 6. He's not even number 8. He needs to play off the front man. It just felt like the players were almost thrown on the pitch, and it was just hoping that it would stick. And against Wales, where Wales probably had their worst performance, and Coleman probably admit they sat off a bit, it did stick for England. But other than that, it never really clicked. And I think a lot of it came down to perhaps not having Welbeck, and I think that imbalance meant that Sterling was the only real wide man, and that disrupted a lot of Hodgson's plan, and perhaps he should have taken Townsend. But going forward with what England need to do, obviously Allardyce seems to be the bookies' favourite, and very much in the media seems to be the one at people believe is the front of the queue, and I think he'd be a very good choice. I mean, he gets lambasted for being this long ball football, but if you look at his Bolton team, this is a man who he built a team with Kevin Davies, JJ Kocher, Yuri Djorkaeff. He can blend styles together. He's not this one-trick pony. And the same with when he was at Blackburn and Newcastle and West Ham. Blackburn and Newcastle got relegated when Allardyce left. West Ham were in the Championship. He got them promoted, stabilised them, laid the foundations for Bilic. So I think he'd be a very good choice for England. Personally, if it was me, I would decide the style of football I wanted to play, and I'd want to play a possession-based, attractive style of football, and I'd go and get Eddie Howe. And very much like Joachim Löw has been given a decade, I'd literally say to Eddie Howe, look, you've got a young squad of players here. Take your time, ingrain the style of play you want to play in them. Look, this might take 2-3 tournaments, but we back you. We think you're a good manager. And let's build a team, for a length of time, rather than thinking, right, let's go and win the next World Cup. Let's actually look for a style of play that we can filter down through the age groups with you at the top. And that would be, for me, the way forward. But whether the FA do that, if I was going to have a bet and a punt on someone, I think they would go for Allardyce. But if it was me, I'd go for Eddie Howe.
Interesting choices. So Eddie Howe, Klinsmann, or Allardyce seem to be the three. And just for my 10 pence worth, I think the manager that England would need right now, or could really do with right now, is currently managing the team I support. I'll just leave that one hanging. Right, that's enough of England then before we all get depressed and actually,
which team? You support loads of teams. That's very ambiguous, Chris.
That is okay. A team that play in red in North London.
Yeah,
is that good enough?
Barbican Pirates manager, get him in.
No, I've heard he's terrible. Let's move on to our teams then. Before everyone turns off and throws us off a bridge, England fans anyway. So we're going to select some teams and try and pick our team of the tournament. So let's start with our goalkeepers from the Euros and who we're going to pick out first. So I'll come to you all individually and we'll get some names. Rich, let's start with you. Who's the goalkeeper that impressed you most?
I've gone Hugo Lloris.
Interesting. And what reasons did you have for that?
I just, plain and simple, I thought across the whole tournament, I thought he was probably the best goalkeeper. There was a lot of time in a lot of matches where he didn't have a great deal to do, but was always there, always he could always rely on him, produce some fantastic saves. I think probably the save in the semi-final, right towards the end of the game from Hovedez even. That reflex save right at the end was probably save of the tournament. I just think he was everything that you'd want from a goalkeeper, everything that you'd want from a captain. Really, really impressed by him.
Good shouts. There's one in the bag for Lloris. John, who did you go with?
I also went with Lloris. I know you're surprised because you thought I was going to say Buffon. And it was very close. But yeah, I thought that had it not been for Lloris, as many goals as France scored, they certainly gave up plenty of chances in games, and he made some really key saves. And let's be honest, Buffon only had to make a few, because Italy's defence is so good. But
couldn't resist, could you?
I couldn't resist. And, he did dive the correct way in every single penalty, I think, as well, in the penalty share. But regardless, no, I thought Lloris was superb. Some of the saves he made were just amazing. And like Rich said, the reaction save against Germany was superb. So, yeah, they wouldn't have got to the final without him, I don't think.
Fair enough. And Simon, is it a clean sweep, I wonder?
I very, very nearly went with Lloris, but in the end, I decided to go for Rui Patricio, just because, I know obviously Portugal in the group stages were quite leaky, but from the last 16 to the final defensively, I thought they were superb. I think conceded 1 goal in the 4 games, won a penalty shootout. Patricio was superb in the final. I just felt that, when it really mattered and when the tournament was on the line, that he was very, very good. And for a goalkeeper, who got injured in the 2014 World Cup and only played 1 game, it was quite nice in that sense. He's not a high-profile goalkeeper, but he ups his game when it was needed. And I think Lloris would have certainly been a close running second, Buffon as well, and Neuer, other than the semi-final, I thought was superb. But I felt Patricio just shaded it.
Interesting.
I did have Patricio, who's on my list of possibles. It was really hard to pick between them.
You'll be happy to know I went full hipster. I went for Lucas Fabianski. Weirdly, again, obviously, I know it's difficult because when you pick these teams, you're conscious you don't want to pick too many players that got to the final because it's just so obvious. But I thought for Fabianski coming in when Szczesny was clearly number 1, he got injured. Fabianski came in. I thought you made a couple of really, really good saves in the group stages. Looked assured. I just thought he was very, very good. But I think the popular vote is Lloris. So we're all happy to go with Lloris, and we're happy with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if France had won the final, we'd have given it to Lloris. So.
Yeah, fair shout. So we're going to go with goalkeeper is Hugo Lloris. What about right back? I've got a feeling this might be a clean sweep, but let's see. John, let's start with you. Who have you gone for?
I went for Kimmich. I was struggling a little bit with this at first when I was trying to think through all the different teams. But I thought for a young player who came in, didn't start the tournament, came in, he was so impressive in a team that has got unbelievable quality, and he didn't look out of place. And I know everyone will point out the mistake he made in the France game, which was obviously, it was a big error. But players make mistakes all the time. Every player in this tournament made a mistake at some point. And to be perfectly honest, you cannot blame that loss on that one error. If anything, he should be looking at the rest of the Germany team and saying, why have none of you scored the goal for the amount of chances we've made? I just thought he was superb, and he's got an unbelievable career ahead of him. I'd snap him up straight away if he was available. I'm sure Bayern Munich are going to keep hold of him, but yeah, I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, good shout. Rich, who have you gone for?
I also went Kimmich as well. I thought for a young player coming into his first tournament, you look at the kind of shoes that he's having to fill in the positions he plays, or position he played in this tournament, but you also remember that it's not the only position he plays in. So he's a very versatile player. Yes, he played just right back in this tournament, but you'd have felt confident if he was called to play elsewhere that he could do the job. Really, really impressed by him. Yeah, minor mistake in the semi-final, but I think for his performances up until then, probably can give him a little bit of slack for that.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one, Simon. Anyone different, or is that a full sweep for you too?
No, I went for Kimmich as well. I thought he was absolutely superb, to be honest. And his penalty and the penalty shootout against Italy was so coolly taken. And for someone who doesn't watch masses of German football, I didn't know a great deal about him. I'd obviously seen quotes from Guardiola sort of constantly praising him and saying how fantastic he is, how good a learner he is, and adapting to the style of football that Pep's played. And I just thought he was absolutely brilliant at right back. And there was a bit of the Philipp Lahm about him, and you wonder whether he'd perhaps be better in that sort of pivot role in front of the back four. But for someone so young, I thought he was absolutely superb. And yeah, he made a mistake, but overall, I mean, he was comfortably the best right back.
It's a clean sweep then, gentlemen, because that's who I've gone for as well. Nothing really to add. I think all of you have nailed it. So Joshua Kimmich of Germany is our right back. Let's go across to the left-hand side then and go with our left back. Simon, do you want to start us off on this one? Who have you gone for?
Again, I went for a player who I didn't know masses about before the tournament start, which is always nice when you discover someone you don't really know. But I went for Rafael Correio, the Portugal left back. Who I thought was absolutely brilliant going forward. I know he's obviously moved to Dortmund now for, I think it's 12 million, 30 million pounds, which is an absolute steal when you consider James Tompkins went for about the same money as Crystal Palace. And for 22 years of age, I thought he was brilliant going forward. He provided some fantastic width for Portugal. As he showed with that free kick in the final, he perhaps should have been on free kicks before Ronaldo, long before then. But I thought, for his age and going forward, for me, he was great to watch. And it was quite nice to see that sort of old school, left back bombing on. And for me, I thought he was a brilliant player. And one who he's sad not to see at Arsenal or another Premier League club, because I think in England he'd probably be great, but maybe in that Dortmund team would be better.
Yeah, I think he will be very, very good at Dortmund for sure. What about yourself, Rich? Anyone different, or have you gone with the same?
No, I've gone with Guerrero as well. I knew how good he was before the tournament. Seen him for a number of years for Lorient be one of the standout performers in Ligue 1 for a couple of seasons. So we're sort of really looking forward to seeing him in this tournament. It was unfortunate that his appearance was at the cost of an injury to Fabio Contrao. So, bit of fortune there, but he absolutely took his opportunity. Really, really impressive. Dortmund, incredible piece of business. Get that done nice and quick, as with so many German sides, it seems. Get that signature done and dusted as soon as possible. He just had a superb tournament. And as Simon pointed out, he should have been on free kicks a long time before that final.
Gotcha.
Quite how Ronaldo can have the gumption to say, I told him to take that free kick. Nah, well, you should have told yourself. Guerrero should have been on those free kicks from the group games onwards, and perhaps their progression may have been a little bit easier from the groups.
Yeah.
But no, for me there was no one that surpassed him in that position.
Is he renowned for being that good at free kicks in France? Then is he known to be?
Yeah. He takes the free kicks for Lorient. He scored a fantastic one, an injury time winner. Only the season just finished. He takes the free kicks there. He actually played left wing for a large part for Lorient at times. So left back is perhaps you're not going to get the absolute best from him, but with so many excellent attacking options for so many different teams, left back's probably going to be where he's going to have to be staying for some time, I think.
Yeah, if you want to see that, guys, against Graham that's a Breton derby, isn't it? I think I'm right in saying that.
In the Guingamp, he scored one against
Guingamp. Sorry, you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. I get my Guingamps and my Rams mixed up. Terrible. I don't know why, but you're absolutely right. That was in the game, the 4-3 game, as you say, in stoppage time. And I've been banging that drum for a while. John, have you got anyone different, or is it a full sweep again?
I did consider cheating for a second and throwing a Florenzi in there because he played left back for one game. But I thought I'm only doing it just because I like him so much. Clean sweep. I thought he was superb throughout the tournament. I thought he got better with every game, and the maturity shown. Again, like the same way we talked about Kimmich. Maybe he's a little bit older. I think is he 20, 21, 22, Guerrero, something like that.
I think he's 20.
So it's maybe only a year or two older than Kimmich. I'm not quite sure, but he's certainly been at that kind of level for a little bit longer. But really, really impressed with his maturity and just how comfortable he looked in the team. And also, you could see that Ronaldo. Obviously, we know he likes to play on the left-hand side anyway, and sort of come in from there. But he linked up with him really, really well. Ronaldo looked happy and comfortable playing with him. Which I think, whatever you may think of him as a person, is certainly a massive compliment as a player. Very easy. I will give one little shout for Matteo De Sciglio, who was amazing against Spain and made one of my favourite tackles of the tournament. There you go.
Again, shameless. Clean sweep again. I also went for Rafael Guerrero. As Rich pointed out there, I was probably one of the few that had seen him quite a lot, given that he plays for the team I follow in France. And I'm absolutely gutted that Arsenal didn't go for him personally. But I think he's going to do very, very well at Dortmund. And as you have all said, I think he was a stand-up performer and probably one of the best players on the pitch in the final. So full credit to him. So there's our fullback sorted out. Let's go to centre-backs. I'm going to ask you for these two as a pair. Just in the interest of time. So let's start with Rich. Rich, who have you gone for as your two centre-backs?
This was tough because I had 3 names written down, so I'm going to relegate one to the substitute bench, and it's... I still haven't decided who I'm going to relegate to. I tell you, it's not going to be a popular one for John, so I'm going to relegate that one to the bench, unfortunately. But I'm going to go with Kamil Glik and Ragnar Sigurdsson. Poland and Iceland, respectively. I think both of them were just rock solid throughout the tournament. Everything that was good about Iceland in terms of their organisation and defensive strengths sort of began and ended with Sigurdsson. As with so many people, I'm not going to profess to know anything about Icelandic football. So I was coming in blind on so many of these players. So. As we mentioned before, it was quite refreshing that you can do that with so many new players and new teams doing better than expected. So Sigurdsson was fantastic throughout the tournament, I thought. Same with Kamil Glik. I think everything that was good about Poland's defence, his organisational skills, marshalling of that defensive line, was fantastic. He secured himself a move to Monaco for really not a lot of money. Excellent piece of business from Monaco to get him snapped up. Pair of them just very, very impressed with good old-fashioned, hard as nails centre-back work, really.
Agreed. Good shouts there, good shouts. And I bet I might have the same one as you on the bench. So, John, look out. John, who have you gone for as your centre-back pairing?
I also took Glick. I had 4 names sort of floating about, so mine was really hard to narrow down. But I paired him with Bonucci, like Richard, Glick was brilliant, and I've watched him for a while at Torino, and lots of people had asked me about, is he good enough for the Premier League, or, this club, that club, and I said, he's a good, solid player. I'm not sure, I was never sure whether he was Champions League level, but he just absolutely shined in this tournament. He was amazing. Excuse me, that's the jar going off. But as for Bonucci, trying to pick one player out of the 3 centre-backs for Italy is always really difficult, but he's always been my favourite out of the 3. He is the voice, the organiser. They all are to a certain extent, but the one thing he's got that separates him from the rest is that ball out from the back, in particular that long pass that you can hit. He does it so much for Juve, and he does the same for Italy, and just for the assist for Giaccherini's goal alone, I had to put him in.
Fair enough. You don't have to justify it, John. It's all right. You can pick whoever you like. Simon, who have you gone with?
Well, I've gone for quite... I had 3 names as well, all who play in the Premier League. One of them quite left field, who I decided to not bench in the end. So I went for Jose Font as one of them.
He was one of my names.
Good
and
shout,
who I thought was absolutely... Because he didn't play in any of the group stages. As we know, Portugal's defence was quite leaky, but he came in from them, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Really, really superb. He made his international debut when he was 30, and he's looks absolutely brilliant in that centre defence. And he made Pepe play very well. And when Pepe wasn't there for the semi-final, he was superb. And alongside him, I've actually gone for someone who plays at left back. I went for Ben Davies because I thought, as that back 3 for Wales, I thought he was brilliant in the games, particularly because of his pace that he was able to provide them, the fact he could play out from the back. And I think we saw in the semi-final when he was suspended, how much of a big miss he was. And for me, he was someone who, he looked like an okay player for Spurs, but I felt in that team, in a back 3, not his traditional role, I thought he was very, very good for Wales, and his miss was a key reason why they went out the tournament. So I went for Font and Ben Davies.
Interesting. Okay. I went for. Did I have any other ones you had? Yes, I had Kamil Glick. So yeah, I thought again, as most of us have said there, solid, overperformed. I think Monaco have got probably a bargain there. I'm sure Rich will agree, and I think he will do a decent job. And John, you will have seen him at Torino, of course, and I think he was very, very good. His partner, whose name escapes me, was also very good in that Polish side. I can't remember who it was, but I thought he was very, very decent. So we've gone with Glick, and I actually went with Pepe. Which every fibre of my being thought this, because I don't like the guy, but no denying he was very, very good, and Font obviously was probably his equal. So we have a dilemma here, gentlemen. Are we all happy to go with Glick as one of them? So I think it's three or four of us.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So we'll go with Glick. So who's gonna be brave enough to stand aside for the centre back then? I think personally.
Well, so Simon had Font, and he was one of my out of the four that I was thinking of. He was the one who didn't make it. My other one of the four I had was Koscielny, who obviously wasn't named, so we can't even though I've named him now, we can't throw him in.
Okay.
I was wondering who Rich's third was.
Mine was who will be on my sub bench was Bonucci.
Okay.
Just to make things
Koscielny was on the bench for me, unfortunately, but I've only but.
And Bonucci was also one that I've considered as well. So that presents us with a problem, because arguably we could say that we could go with Jose Font, because I've also got a Portuguese player in my back four. So we've got to make a decision here, boys and girls. Are we going to go with Bonucci and an Italian, or are we going to stick to Portugal and have one of Font or Pepe?
I'd perhaps go down the route of the Italians, because I'm not sure we're going to have any other Italians in the in the team, arguably.
Yeah,
I think Bonucci.
I'm going to argue against having an Italian in the team. I know this is disturbing, but I probably would give it to Font just because they got further, and he was such an improvement on the Portugal team. I think would be fair. And also, asking an Italian to play in a back four is kind of disrespectful.
Well, I do like 30-year-olds making debuts, so I'd be happy with Font going in there.
And Ross would be happy as well. So
yes, absolutely. I tell you what, then we'll make a stand. What we'll do is we'll jump ahead and say Bonucci then is going to be our defensive substitute.
Yeah.
And we'll go with Font as our centre back then. So we're happy with that?
Very good.
Good. Right, so that's decided then. So we have a goalkeeper decided. We have a back four decided. Let's go for two holding midfielders, because we're playing a 4-2-3-1 because it's very en vogue at the moment. Well, I don't know, actually, is it anymore? But it's what most teams played. So we've got two kind of holding, deep-lying playmakers, whatever you want to call them. Simon, you can kick us off. Who are the two names on your sheet in that position?
I think this was a really, really tough one. I thought it was almost the hardest bit of the pitch. I had three very, very strong names, and I'm going to go for Aaron Ramsey and Tony Cruz as my pair. I thought Ramsey was fantastic in that Wales team, and for a lot of Arsenal fans, it was quite an eye-opener watching him play. Certainly in that quarter-final against Belgium, the energy he showed, and admittedly for Wales, he had a bit more of a license to have a bit more of a free role like Bale did, but his energy and his dynamism and his creativity, I think, was just proof that, he's got the legs, he's got the ability, he's got the passability to play in a two and get up and down. And as for Tony Cruz, I mean, personally for me, I thought Germany were the best actual team at the tournament in terms of the most complete defensively and offensively. They were probably the best balanced team, and I thought Cruz was superb in the middle of the park. Watching him was an absolute exhibition. So I was happy with those two, and on the benches would have been a very able backup. But yeah, Ramsey and Cruz for me.
Interesting. There's going to be a weird crossover here because, I'll say no more for now. John, what are the two names you've gone with?
I had Tony Cruz as one. I thought he was probably the best midfielder at the tournament. I love watching him play. I have no idea how he does the things he does with the football. The passes he makes are absolutely obscene, and how he sees them, and just the calmness he's got on the ball is brilliant. The other thing that he seems to add to his game as well is I always thought he was quite a slow player, but a couple of times he knocked the ball past people, ran past them, and his shooting as well is fantastic. I think Real Madrid be better off keeping him and not buying Pogba. Just an idea, but there we go. He was one. The other one, who I know is absolutely got no chance of going in, but I had to put him in because I thought he was brilliant, was Giaccherini. The one player who, when I looked at the Italy squad when it was announced before the tournament, I thought, oh my god, there was so many names on the list that I thought, why have they even been picked? And his was at the top of it. And he was probably Italy's best player throughout. Covered more ground than any other player. Was completing more passes, scoring goals. Was up and down non-stop. Was never substituted. Just amazing. Such a good player. So as a holding two, I thought, having one to do all the running and Tony Cruz just to pass the ball around would be a perfect pairing for me.
Like it. I think we're onto a winner with one of these two, I hope. Rich, have you got any two different names or much the same?
I also had Aaron Ramsey. I thought he was, I knew he was a decent player. He had a decent spell with Arsenal a couple of seasons ago. But I had no idea he could perform at this level. He was just brilliant. He was exactly the sort of standout player that Wales really needed. I think Bale would have taken all the plaudits, whether you agree with that or not. But for me, there was no one better in a Welsh shirt than Aaron Ramsey. I think missing him, and yes, I think Ben Davies was a big miss as well in that semi-final. But just missing that sort of drive, that on the ball, what he can do on the ball, his movement off the ball, what he brought to the team in those departments. That was probably the big thing that they missed in that Portugal game. So Ramsey was one of my picks. The other pick I went for was Krychowiak.
Hey.
I thought he was excellent. What he sort of does as in front of that back four, he's not your traditional sort of defensive midfielder in terms of sitting in front of your defence. He's not, he is willing to push forward with the ball. And he's very good at going forward on the ball. But he was just fantastic. He'd come off the back of a really, really good season with Sevilla. So really, really impressive. At times it just felt like he was a bit like a metronome. He was just very steady, never really looked rushed, always seemed like he had plenty of time on the ball, excellent distribution. And I'd like to say PSG have got a bargain, but at the price they paid for him, it's difficult to argue with that there's anything bargain about that value. But he's exactly, the kind of player I think they need to play alongside Verratti in their midfield. So, Ramsey and Krychowiak for me.
You've just reminded me of how exciting that PSG midfield could be next season with that. And just him sitting in that holding role. Oh, it's going to be good. Anyway, take away my bias for a second. I also went with Krychowiak, so I'm glad you said that, Rich. So we're going to have a dilemma here. Tony Cruz was my other one. So I think we can probably all get... Are we all going to be happy to agree that Cruz can take one of those spots?
Yep.
3 out of 4. Okay, good. So Tony Cruz is one. Now we have an issue then, because now I have Aaron Ramsey in my best team here.
However, I have him in my 11 as well, but I don't have him in the holding role.
Same. I have him in the central sort of attacking of the three behind. So he's in my team and he's in yours, John. So that leaves us with a dilemma. Do we go with Krychowiak on the basis that we can fit in whoever you guys have gone with in the three in front? Or are we going to sort of break the rules and move Ramsey back? So let's have a debate on that.
I had Krychowiak on my bench. He was my midfield bench player.
Ooh, interesting.
I would be happy with I had João Mario as my midfield bench player, but I would have been...
Very underrated as well, wasn't he?
I thought he was absolutely brilliant player. Very shocked that he's not made a big move yet, but maybe he will. But
anyone have Joe Allen in and around this team?
He was in the running. There was a few. I did have a weird one. Well, not a weird one because I thought he was brilliant. But for a little while, I was considering. I was like, is Zoltan Guerra get on the bench? At 37 years old.
And Shishak as well. He was another one, wasn't he?
37 years old. He was amazing. Linchpin of that Hungary team. So even he got a mention.
I could maybe allow Ramsey to be moved higher up the pitch because one of my other three could be moved higher up the pitch potentially, but
I'll tell you what we'll do. What we'll do is we'll leave that one floating for a minute. We'll all agree that we're going to go with Tony Cruz, and then we'll see who the three in front have we gone with, and then maybe we'll see if there's room for Aaron Ramsey, and then we'll come back to it. So we'll stick with one. Let's move on to the three in front then. Rich, I'm going to start with you this time. Who are the three? So you've got a wide. It doesn't matter where they actually played. You've got a wide right, a central mid, and a wide left behind the forward. So, who are the three you've picked out?
Well, the central one of those three is Griezmann. There can be cases, I think, made for different position for him, but certainly I thought he was at his best for France when he was playing slightly off the central striker. Didn't have a very good start to the tournament at all. In fact, he had a woeful game against Romania. He was brought off. Him and Pogba were, well, I slated him, but French press in particular slated both of them. System then got tweaked as the tournament went on. He was then brought from out wide on the right to a more central position, and all of a sudden, bang! It sort of clicked. We saw the best of him. His movement. His movement off the ball is some of the best you'll see in Europe. For such a small guy, he's so good in the air. He got a couple of headed goals. So he's my central player. I've then got four players to make up the two wider positions. I'm going to go. I may be accused of being biased here, but for my right-hand side position. Bear in mind, he didn't play a great deal, but I want him because he was so good.
I know where you're going with this.
Was Moussa Sissoko?
Oh, okay. No, it wasn't. You weren't going where I thought. He didn't play a great deal of games, and that may ultimately be what cost him a position in this team. But when he played, he was the best player on the pitch. In the games that he played, that final, I maintain he was probably the best player on the pitch. Certainly in the 90 minutes, I thought he was. He had a really good game in the semi-final. He had a really good game in the quarter-final. I was just really, really impressed by him, and he's got so much stick from Newcastle fans. Some of it justified because he has the talent, but just doesn't seem to produce it for Newcastle. Some of it perhaps not justified, but there is that absolute reward that when player and coach believe in each other, trust each other, that relationship is worth so much. And that's exactly what you saw there with Deschamps and Sissoko. There were so many that queried, well, why is he still in the team? He played really, really poor season for Newcastle in a side that got relegated. Why is he there? Well, 3 games pretty much that we saw exactly why he was there. Really, really good performances from him. Out on the left, that's where I came a little bit more stuck for idea. I mean, I could. Well, he didn't. Yeah, I'm going to go. He's not even on my list, but I've just remembered him. I'm going to go Gareth Bale. We're going to have more problems here. I can see it coming.
Yeah, I think you could make a case that he plays perhaps more centrally. As a sort of more striker role for Wales, but drifting out wide left. I think he has to be included. Well, certainly has to be debated to be included for the run that Wales had and the key part that he did play in it. But there are quite a few players I think we could be debating about these three positions.
Yes, absolutely. And Simon, I'll let you crack on with yours now. Then let's see if we can add further fuel to this fire. Who have you gone with in your three?
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with Rich in that Griezmann was the middle of the three. Rich summed it up perfectly. When it all clicked, he was brilliant there, and he did combine very well with Giroud, and we got to see the best of him and just how good a player he is, and how you can understand why, when there's very few attacking players of that quality, every club would want them in the world. And then out wide, I had 3 to try and get down to 2. In the end, I put Zudzak on the bench, who I thought was superb in the group stages. I saw Hungary play Iceland, and he was fantastic. And I thought he was brilliant in those group stage games. In a team that was a good side, Hungary, but they lacked a bit of flair and quality. I thought he was fantastic, and I know he was quite good at PSV a few years ago, but he's gone a bit off the football landscape. But yeah, amazingly impressed with him, and again that enjoyment of finding someone who you wouldn't have spoken about a month ago. But in the end, I went for Bale on the right. He was brilliant in that Wales team, wasn't he? Goals, energy, happy to take the burden of being the talisman, full of running, and it would have been up there as player of the tournament. And on the left, I went for who is just my favourite player at the moment. It was last season, Dimitri Payet, because the goal in the opening game with a minute to go, he scored against Albania as well. A fantastic player who I just love watching. And I thought in that France team he was great. And obviously later on it was Griezmann who came to the fore and was the talisman. But in those first two games, particularly the Romania game, it was Payet who got them out of jail. And Deschamps, the few times I did do press with him, one of the things he got very angry about was when a French journalist asked him, saying, "Oh, it's amazing with Payet because you dropped him and got him out of the team." And Deschamps bit a little bit and was saying, "No, I didn't drop him. I was out for September for internationals. Then he got injured, so he missed 4 months. So he was never out of the setup." But other people say that Payet was out of the system, and for him to come back after that year with West Ham and be so good, I thought was amazing. But you and Rich will probably know more, Chris, about whether Payet really was marginalised. But for me, to see him come into the tournament and take it by that storm was fantastic.
Yeah, taking on the form from West Ham, that was the most impressive bit of extending that form he showed throughout the season and taking it on with France was exceptional. And this is just going to get more complicated because, John, it's your turn. I bet Giaccherini's in this. Who's your three?
I already named Giaccherini. I'm not going to name him again.
Oh, you did. Sorry, no, you're right. Yes, yeah.
No, don't be silly. Italy don't have attacking mids. Well, we do, but they're all on the bench. They never play. Connie doesn't like bringing them on. I've got the most narrow three behind the striker that you're ever going to get, but they're all superb. I had Mesut Ozil, who it just was amazing throughout the tournament. It must be so frustrating being him as a footballer, because the amount of quality balls that he delivers and just people don't finish them, whether it's at club level or international level, must be so frustrating. And to see German journalists who, I think people outside of Germany don't realise that Ozil he gets as much stick back in Germany and gets criticised a hell of a lot. And the German journalists were raving about his performances in the tournament, and they're generally not very kind to him. And they were saying it's like the best they've ever seen him play. I thought he was brilliant to watch. I also put Ramsey was one of my three behind, because I thought, in this Welsh team you see what Ramsey can do when he's given that licence and freedom to roam about the pitch where he needs to go to get forward as much as possible. And I thought, as key to the team as Bale is, and as good a player he is, he's this sort of symbolic figurehead in the same way that Ronaldo is for Portugal, that actually the player that Wales missed the most was Ramsey, and that was a huge loss for them. It just wasn't the same without him in the team. I thought he was brilliant. And the other player, now you're all going to be confused. You're like, where's Griezmann? We'll get to him in a minute. The other player I went for was João Mario, who I thought was excellent throughout the tournament, and only really got highlighted in the final. But I thought throughout the tournament he was really, really good. Just sort of quietly going about his business. Got better with every game. Was a real pleasure to watch. And fingers crossed, there is a rumour. It's only a rumour, but there is a rumour he's signing for Inter Milan, and that he's possibly turned down a move to, I can't remember who it is, but someone in Spain. But apparently he's turned down a move to someone in Spain, and he's going to sign for Inter Milan. That's my ITK knowledge for all our listeners. I hope that's true.
I think it's Valencia. I think he's not.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. You don't want to play
George
for them.
Mendes surprisingly offering to take him there.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you don't want to play for them. Come to Inter. It's much nicer. Yes, I'd love to see him there. So yeah, I cheated slightly because you could obviously guess where Griezmann is. So that was my free.
That's fair enough. Well, if that's the case, I've cheated too. There's a spoiler alert for you. Right, this is going to get interesting now. I have Dimitri Payet as well. So is that three out of the four of us have got him?
I think it was just you and Simon.
Was it just me and Simon? Oh,
I had him as a name.
Yeah, he was in my name of floating. Yeah. These three positions, there was quite a few options, I felt.
Okay, so are we all kind of happy that despite we've all got our picks across, so that's the good thing, but are we all happy that Payet makes this side overall?
I think overall for his performances throughout the tournament, I know he dipped off a little bit towards the end and some people were a little bit disappointed at that, but I think maybe it was just more that Griezmann had sort of taken more of the role on himself. I still thought he was very good. And
I think for his group stage, I don't think there was a better player in the group stages. But yeah, I think the system, sort of in the knockouts, the system changed for France, and it perhaps just wasn't a system that was going to get the best out of Payet, but it got the best out of more players, I think. So I think you probably have to say Payet probably does deserve that spot.
Okay, so he's fairly likely, but let's just make a case for the others as well. So obviously I had Aaron Ramsey in that attacking role with John as well. So we've got to make a decision whether we drop him back or we don't, because he seems to get in all of our sides. So we're all kind of agreement that Ramsey gets in. It's where he goes. My other midfielder is Ivan Perisic, who I'm on my own here, so I don't think he's going to get in. But
I had him as a name. It was one of my four for the wider roles.
Good. Okay, so at least he was in that. He was in the ballpark, shall we say? So we've got to
just because De Gea was looking the other way and he had one of his terrible shots that went in at the near post. It's not at all that I moan about him when he plays for Inter Milan. Just because that went in, sorry. Just carry on.
I mean, I wouldn't mind binning my striker off to move Bale or Griezmann further forward. Well, see, partly because there weren't any good number 9s.
Well, this is where we've
apart from Morata, I thought was okay. The rest of them.
This is where we've got a problem. This is where we've got a massive problem because I have Griezmann up top as well. So, because like you just said there was a real lack of number 9s. So, we've got a decision to make. Are we all happy that Ramsey was better further forward, or does anyone want to make a case for the defence playing him deeper?
I've always thought better further forward.
Okay,
Who's playing deeper if he moves forward?
That would have been Krychowiak,
yeah. And so essentially you'd have Krychowiak and Tony Cruz as our two holders, if that was the case.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. I wouldn't.
No, that is what I've got on my sheet here for my lineup. So
I'd go with that because I have a feeling no one's going to go with my choice of centre forward. So
no one will pick mine either.
I'd go with that because I think we're probably all in agreement that Bale and Griezmann are in the side. It's just one of them's the central striker, one of them's wide.
Yeah.
Okay, if any of you have picked Harry Kane, I'm ending this podcast right now.
Rashford.
So we'll go with our back four. We had no problems with our back four, but we were on the fence with the holding two. But I think we've come to an agreement. We'll go with Grzegorz Krychowiak of Poland and now PSG, and Toni Kroos of Germany and Real Madrid. So we'll go with those two. And then our midfield. So we're all going to agree then Aaron Ramsey gets into our forward line of our midfield. Done. We're happy with that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ramba goes in. I would suggest, on the balance of everybody's put forward as an argument, for me, it depends on the centre forward, but I'm thinking it's probably going to be Bale and Payet. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So I will just before we make that decision, let's just move on to the centre forwards and just see if we have all got, because Rich and Simon were saying you got different players. So Simon, who have you gone with as your centre forward?
I went for Nani in the end. Portugal,
did you?
Just because,
Jesus.
I mean, they didn't have any strikers, and I thought he ended up with a few goals, and that was the dearth of strikers on talent. I thought he was actually all right, to be honest.
He was much better than Ronaldo, wasn't he? I thought.
That's what I mean, I know Ronaldo scored some good goals, but I thought in terms of, I mean, if you'd said before the tournament that Nani would get 3 goals, an assist, and have an influence on it, I think people have basically forgotten about him. Although I know he did have a good season, club season, but. He was right before. I was tempted to go for Morata because he was my favourite forward that I actually watched live, but he did fluff his lines a bit, but against Turkey he was superb. But I mean, there wasn't any good number 9s really. I don't think, not like old Euros. There wasn't really a striker who sort of stood out, which is probably summed up by the fact that some of us were trying to crowbar other people in there. So.
Okay.
I'm wondering who Rich went for now. I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, go on, Rich.
Sit down, Arsenal fans. I went with Olivier Giroud.
So he was.
He was in my reckoning as well.
Me. I thought about it.
I agree with everything that Sam was saying. There really was a lack of quality centre forwards. For me, Giroud was probably the pick of them. Yes, okay, he's god awfully slow, as we saw in that semi-final against Germany. Yes, he misses a lot of chances, but I put him in the side for the work rate that he puts in. Like, there's no one in that France side that works as hard as Giroud. His link-up play with Griezmann is fantastic. They're understanding the goals. The goal that Griezmann scored against Republic of Ireland, that Giroud knocked down perfectly into the path of Griezmann. The goal then against Iceland in the quarterfinals was a ball from Pogba. Neat little flick then from Giroud, because Griezmann had made that fantastic peeling run off Giroud round the back of the Iceland defence, and that flick from Giroud just found Griezmann. So he also then got amongst the goals as well, scored the opening goal, got a couple of important goals, was generally quite a nuisance. Yes, okay, he got in the way of a few French free kicks as well, so it was a nuisance to the likes of Payet and Pogba as well. But I just admire the abuse that he gets, the fact that he can just block it all out, can keep just performing so tirelessly for the France side. And he had so much pressure on him going into this tournament, with so many French supporters sort of castigating him for being the reason why Benzema wasn't playing, not for Benzema's own issues or any of his off-the-field incidents, or the fact he's just crap on the field for France. Really impressed with Giroud's work ethic, work rate, and just what he offered to the side, really.
Honestly, if he didn't play for Arsenal, I think he would have been so much more revered and praised at that tournament. If he played for if he played in France for a team, and he would have been, everyone would have said, "Oh, you've got to sign this guy up. He's superb. He's brilliant."
He's very underrated. I do just want to ask, because we get asked this a lot on a different podcast we do. But Rich, would it be fair to say that for those taking away the actual French supporters, Giroud he had that really stellar season with Montpellier. Do you think he is a little bit the figure of fun, in that French team, as you say, because of the Benzema stuff, rather than he's almost been a scapegoat, hasn't he, because of the Benzema stuff? Because
he is
very underappreciated.
Yeah, everyone is just like, well, you're only there because Benzema has been, victim of the French Football Federation conspiracy and things like that. They forget that, however long Giroud's goalless streak for Arsenal was earlier this season just gone, Benzema's lasted for pretty over a year for France. And it's an argument that I have with so many Real Madrid fans, so many Benzema fans on social media, that they can't understand that just because you perform well for a club doesn't automatically mean that you're going to be performing like that for the national side. And Benzema just hasn't. For all the amazing goal scoring statistics he has with Real Madrid, he has 3 tournament goals for France from the however many that he scored. I forget how many he scored, but 3 tournament goals out of all of them for a striker of his supposed ability. Just Giroud got that in this one tournament. So yeah, Giroud suffers a lot from sort of comparison to the ideal way people believe Benzema plays for France. They don't actually look at the statistics. They don't look at the facts. That actually Benzema offers very little for France. He offers nothing but frustration and trouble, if I'm perfectly honest. So he suffers a lot from that. And you look at what he goes through in England. The abuse that he gets, and the sort of Mickey taking that he has, because of he had that. However long was it 3 months or something like that? It was. He didn't score.
Did score, yeah.
He still scored 20 odd goals across the season. Let's remember that. And I mean, most sides would take a centre forward who would score 20 plus goals every season, and it seems for me that Giroud is that. And so, I think if he does go this summer, which I've seen rumours that he might be involved in some deal with Higuain, for example, or if they try and offload him because they're bringing in another striker, I think he is a player that Arsenal will miss, because he's the kind of player that sort of Arsenal need. And I'm not going to say that, I'll probably get a load of Arsenal fans now hurling abuse at me because I'm not going to say how Arsenal should play, but he is exactly the kind of striker that Arsenal need. It's perhaps a support player that they need then to play alongside him, or perhaps just off him. Look at how Arsenal aren't going to get Griezmann, but you look at how Griezmann and Giroud play.
Yep.
It's that kind of relationship that they need to build between two attacking players. So he does get a lot of unfair stick. But you look at that front side and he's tracking back, he's throwing himself all over the place. There is not a single player who works as hard, and it's just something that you can't fail to be impressed by. But sadly, some people aren't impressed. So that's the way it is.
I can speak from experience, Rich. Arsenal fans are hard to please, aren't they, John? Now, John, to sort of draw a line under this team before we all argue over the subs, which I have a feeling we will. You went with me, did you say, with Griezmann as a striker rather than a wide player? Is that what you had?
Yeah, I thought about. I tried to pick. I wanted a genuine striker. Griezmann can clearly, obviously, do the job. He's fantastic. But I like Rich and Simon said, there wasn't really anyone who stood out. I thought Giroud probably was the best of the bunch. I thought Pella for Italy was really good. Again, not in terms of goals, but his focus is win the ball, hold it up, lay it off to where there, and Giaccherini and players running on, and he did that perfectly. And if that's what you want for your striker, it's great. But he's trying to make the team a bit more exciting. I think honestly, the best way around this is I think we all agreed that Ramsey should go in. We all agreed that Griezmann should go in. I think we all agreed that Payet, and the other one was Bale. So then I think the argument was just over which one would you play as the striker. I think for me, you'd play Bale and then Griezmann off him would probably be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And of course, our system is fluid, so we can move it around however we like.
Exactly. I must say that I'm very upset that Mesut Ozil didn't get in. I know I am an Arsenal fan and biased, but I do think he had an amazing tournament. But maybe I can sneak him on the bench. There's
a few. I mean, just glancing at a few of the names here, I thought Adrian Silva was excellent for Portugal. You mentioned João Mario. Jacob Blaszczykowski, who was written off really a couple of years ago. Eden Hazard decided to be a footballer again for a few weeks, which was nice.
I actually had Hazard down as one of my four, only for the fact I thought he put in the best individual 90-minute performance of the tournament in the game against
Republic of Ireland. Oh, Hungary, yeah. Of course, yeah. Single-handedly destroyed them, didn't they?
Yeah, really? That was as a single player performance goes. I thought that was the best in the tournament. Aside from that, as with Belgium, really, there was sort of just a bit sort of, I don't know.
Nainggolan had a good tournament, I think.
Nainggolan, yeah.
Mario Gomez was one I was thinking about, maybe considering he was just thrown in the 23 as like a last resort, and he actually became quite important to that Germany team. But
John,
I also
we all had quite similar names. Like I had Sissoko, like Rich as well. He was one of the names considering, because I just thought he really changed the French team when he came into it. He was one of my considerations for a forward position.
And I also had Renato Sanchez as well.
Yes,
I thought, he had, he was this young, huge prospect that all of a sudden was going into the tournament with this 30-odd million euro price tag on his head, and actually, he handled it really, really well. Perhaps struggled a little bit in the final, but understandably so for someone so young. He was going to, unfortunately, just fizzle out after a long season, and then playing such an important role. Actually, he wasn't part of the starting 11 plans anyway to be part of the starting 11, but sort of forced his way in, and really didn't look out of place for however old he is, 18, 19, is he, or something like that?
Yeah.
18, yeah.
18, yeah. I mean, that's a good shout. And John mentioned as well earlier on Jeff Hendrick, who had a less than stellar season at Derby, and then all of a sudden is now being looked at by Premier League clubs. And I read the other day that apparently he's attracted the interest of AC Milan. I was like, really? That's quite bizarre. But I mean, you never know, do you? These things happen. But I agree. And there are a lot of players that we've left out, but we can't have them all, can we? They're not like Pokemon.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think actually, you know what, for a tournament that didn't have many standout games and won't be looked back perhaps on as one of the more entertaining European championships, there were actually a lot of really, really good individual performances.
That's a very fair point. Yeah, it's often overlooked, I think. So I think we come to a decision. We'll rattle through our subs, but I think we're going to go with Griezmann or Bale up front either way, and whoever isn't up front is going to be wide, along with Payet and Ramsey in the centre of the three behind. I think that is the common decision that we're going to go with. So all we've got to do is argue over our substitutes, and we've kind of already picked one, haven't we? Because I think we've all agreed Bonucci deserves a bit of credit. So I think he will be our defender. Now, my other two subs, I've gone with, they're both Welsh. I went with Bale as a sub, because I had Griezmann as a front man. And I went with Joe Allen as well. So I've got sort of double Welsh there. Has anyone got anybody different they want to throw into the mix for the subs?
I had Font as one of my names. Obviously, he's now in the team. Sissoko was one who I thought was possibly worthy. I suppose if we're going to have Bale and Griezmann sort of as the floating number 10 striker, we should probably have an actual striker on the bench. So maybe Rich's impassioned argument for Giroud should get him a spot.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm leaning that way slightly now. Simon, Rich, did you have anybody else that you want to put a case for?
I had Payet, Bonucci, Renato Sanchez, and Payet on my bench.
Cool. So Payet in the side. So Sanchez probably would be the next one to step forward as a candidate. And Simon, did you have anybody you want to fight for?
I had João Mario and Zudzak as the other two on my bench, but
yes.
I'd be quite happy with Giroud and maybe someone of the ilk of Sissoko or Hazard or something. I think Giroud would be worthy of being the striking option.
Yeah. Zudzak, of course, good in raggy dolls, I have to say. Anyone born in the 80s will get that reference. If you aren't, I apologise. I think, like John said, I think Rich has made an impassioned case for the handsome Frenchman that is Olivier Giroud. I think if we're going to put Bale and Griezmann into our starting lineups, that frees us up for a slightly different option for the bench in way of more of a target man,
an actual striker
forwards, an actual striker. Yeah. So the hell with your false nines. So I think Giroud takes a place with Bonucci on our bench. I think if we're all happy with that, that's what I would be inclined to go with.
Yep.
So then it's just the midfielder, the other midfielder on our bench. So, I mean,
I'll give it to Sissoko.
I think, it's 2 votes already there, isn't there?
Yeah, I'd be happy with Sissoko. I mean, all the other names mentioned are certainly worthy as well. Like Renato Sanchez, I thought was great. João Mario, I thought had a really good tournament. Please sign for it now. But yeah, I'd be very happy with Sissoko. Very versatile.
Okay, and nobody went with anyone English at all in this team. Funny that. Yeah, I think we're going to go. I think we're going to go with Sissoko then. Who'd have thought, huh?
Well, who would have thought it?
I mean, gee, and
I only mentioned his name as a joke.
Yeah, and you know what will happen now? Newcastle are going to get so much money for a guy who.
Well, they've already said €40 million minimum.
40 million euros. Yeah. My good.
For a player that he doesn't want to stay there. The fans don't want him there.
No.
It seems quite clear the club don't particularly want him there, but they're saying, well, you're not going to go for unless somebody coughs up 40 million. Which today PSG were rumoured to be saying, 40 million, we'll write a check.
let's be honest, that's down the back of the sofa at PSG, isn't it? So quite easy. Okay, well I think we've established our team then. So from back
I
to
will.
front.
I will quickly. Sorry, just after you knocked the English, I will give one Englishman some love. Adam Lallana.
Lallana.
I actually thought he had a really good tournament, and I feel a bit sorry for him that he got dropped for that last game because I thought he was the type of player they should have probably put on against a really good defensive unit.
Yeah, I think
I'll also make one case for an England player, Jack Butland. Not being there was probably the best thing that could have happened to his
career. Yeah.
He can now come back in as this fresh-faced. He's the goalkeeper of the future. You weren't part of that catastrophe in the summer. There's the number 1 shirt.
Yeah, and Joe Hart can wash his hair for a bit. Yeah, I think that's probably a good shout. Kyle Walker maybe briefly was sort of half decent. Eric Dyer I think got plaudits, although taking my bias aside, I thought they were a little bit over the top. But yeah, not many of the home nations. And a quick nod to the goalkeeper for Northern Ireland, whose name escapes me. I forgot what's his name.
McGovern.
McGovern.
Out of contract, McGovern. Yeah, looking for a club.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'm sure he won't be struggling now.
No, nor will Hal Robson-Kanu, of course.
No.
That wonderful goal in the quarterfinals. So from back to front, then we have gone with this as our final team. We have Hugo Lloris in goal of France, of course. We got a back four, right back of Joshua Kimmich of Germany, and a left back of Rafa Guerreiro of Portugal. The centre backs with Kamil Glik and Jose Font of Portugal and Poland, respectively. 2 midfielders holding deep line playmakers, whatever you want to call them. Gregor Krychowiak of Poland and Toni Kroos of Germany. The 3 in front of those, we've gone with Dimitri Payet, Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, and then Antoine Griezmann up front, or Bale, whichever way you want to put it. Those are our lineups, our starting lineup, as it were, and our subs we've gone with Leonardo Bonucci of Italy, Olivier Giroud of France, and Momo Sissoko of France. So interesting admissions there. Probably Ronaldo, I would say, would be the biggest omission we've had there, but nevertheless, let us know what your thoughts are. Give us a tweet and call us morons if you like, because after all, we put our opinions out there to be shot.
I'm looking forward to hearing from the Arsenal fans and the Newcastle fans.
do you know what, Rich? What will happen is if Arsenal don't sign a striker this summer, you'll hear a lot of people messaging you about how Giroud isn't good enough, and if we do, you'll probably get a lot of people going, "Oh no, he's quite good. He's good backup."
Always rated him. Always rated him. Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Okay, so before we wrap things up, I just want to kind of look into the future a little bit. Crystal ball. Obviously, we've got Rich ahead of the French season upcoming here. We've got John ahead of the Italian season upcoming. Simon's going to probably have a look at the English side of things, and I'll fill in the blanks for Spain and Germany. I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of names to maybe look out for, whether it be World Cup qualifying or whether it be even further ahead to the next Euro. So from your relevant league experience or national experience, is there anyone that might be about to break through and cause a stir? John, let's start with you. Any Italians or people plying their trade in Italy that you think will be worth looking out for ahead of these next round of international tournaments?
We have a new manager, Gianpiero Ventura, who has already stated that Balletti of Torino, a player who I always mention this every time. I know you like Kris, young striker who I think actually should have gone to the tournament. Not that I'm knocking Italy, because they were amazing and filled me with joy the whole way through. But he said it would basically be he would have failed his job if he's not leading the line for Italy in the World Cup in Russia. So I expect him to be coming into the squad. He's already said that there'll be a lot more youth, so the players that were on the bench in this tournament, you're likely to see more of Insigne, who obviously a lot of people will know anyway from Napoli. You will also it's probably now about the time that Berardi will get the step up to the national team. Players talked about a lot from Sassuolo, and also I'm forgetting someone else, Bernardeschi.
Lugani as well?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's certainly a possibility now with Barzagli is 36, Chiellini's over 30 and still has injury problems quite often. So whether there's a change of system or not, I'm not sure. But yes, Regani maybe makes a step up. You've obviously got Romagnoli as well from Milan. So there's a lot of exciting young Italian players. But yeah, fingers crossed Balletti is going to be, the striker that Italy have been crying out for some years. But yeah, there's some exciting players coming through.
Yep, here. Rich, what about France, or indeed players from Ligue 1 that you think are on the precipice of maybe breaking through?
Well, for the French team, it's relatively settled. There's a few sort of areas I think they're going to be cause for concern. Very, very quickly, then running through, you've got goalkeeper Lastleries nailed down for 3 more years still. Centre backs, well, once everyone's back and fully fit, they're relatively spoilt for choice. Koscielny will be around for probably another tournament. You've got Varane to come back. You've got possibly Mamadou Sakho to come back. You've got Umtiti, who came into this tournament as a reserve, got eventually called up, and then played really, really well for his sort of appearances in the last few games. He's now secured his move to Barcelona. You've got Aymeric Laporte, who's now going to be staying at Bilbao. He signed a contract extension there. So they're relatively sport for choice centre back. It's
Kurt
fullbacks.
Zuma as well.
Kurt Zuma, of course. Kurt Zuma when he's coming back. You've got you relatively well. It's the fullbacks really is probably where they're going to be looking at changes, because at right back, well, they had Bakary Sagna and Christophe Jallet as their right back options in the tournament. They're both really the wrong side of 30 now. Right back is a real problem position for France. There's really not many coming through. Probably the two biggest possibilities to come through. You've got Sébastien Corchia at Lille, or you've got Djibril Sidibe, who's just moved to Monaco, who actually played left back for Lille last season, but his preferred position is right back, and that's where he'll play for Monaco next season. Sidibe is slightly the younger of the two, although Corchia has that experience. Is probably a little bit more solid defensively of the two. I think when you look at that French team, you want a bit more of a defensive right back than an attacking right back. So I would expect Corchia, although Sidibe was the reserve option. So it's really going to be a toss-up between those two. Midfield is relatively set. Pogba, he had an okay tournament. I think definitely could have been room for improvement, but the system was chopping and changing all the time. I think players to come through there, you're probably looking at people like Corentin Tolisso at Lyon, Adrien Rabiot, PSG, both numerous appearances for the under-21s. They could well be looking at having a call-up. Further up the field, then you've probably got Nabil Fekir to come back into the side, who had a lengthy injury last season, so he'll come back in. And then you've then got the likes of Lacazette. You've got the likes of sort of Kingsley Coman's still in the squad, but he'll gradually start to play a more senior role in the side. And then player I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does in Dortmund will be Ousmane Dembele. Played for my team Rennes last season, was the breakthrough player in Ligue 1. Got his, well, no one knows if it was a big money move or not. No one's still 100% sure how much he went for, but really looking forward to how he'll play, because I think he'll play quite regularly for that Dortmund side. And the thought of him and Aubameyang and the other youngsters that Dortmund have in that side is just it's going to make me want to watch Bundesliga football next season.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm quite excited by that as well, and I'll chuck a name at you in a minute, but I'll come back to that because I want to get Simon's thoughts on the English side of things. Simon, obviously, a lot of this is going to depend on who ends up being England manager, of course, and what their policy will be. But anybody that you've obviously covered Leicester last year, so you'd have seen quite a lot of clubs that visited Leicester. Is there any young English talent that you think is ready to step up?
I think in terms of English talent, I think one obviously focusing on where the problem areas have been, obviously centre backs being an issue. Michael Keane at Burnley's been very, very good. He obviously came through the ranks at Manchester United. Was very good for Burnley last year in helping get promoted. A lot of clubs, including Leicester, would quite like to buy him, but Burnley want £20 million. So whether he'll leave or not is not for certain. But he's a very good player, and he's only sort of 21, 22. But again, crazy money for someone of that age who still hasn't got an international senior cap anyway. And another England player, obviously, the issues again in France was out wide with Sterling being the only real wide man. Townsend issue is Nathan Redmond, who's just moved to Southampton. I think he could do very well under Claude Puel there. Showed glimpses at Norwich when he was given the opportunity. He was a bit in and out of the team under Alex Neil, but I think he might well fit Puel's style very well. And given the fact that Redmond, I think he was the record caps holder for England under 21, so he was very good for them. And I think he could get an opportunity with England if he starts well and plays well there. Jordan Ives, another one who's made a big move. £15 million to go to Bournemouth is a lot of money, but if he gets his opportunity there, and Eddie Howe, he could be another who gets an opportunity out wide. And as for someone plying their trade who could force themselves to be, a starter for their international side, I'd probably say Michy Batshuayi at Chelsea. Lukaku was okay in France at the Euros, but he wasn't, outstanding. And I think that opportunity with a new manager coming in for Belgium, the striking spot will pop up for grabs. I think at Chelsea they're going to play a 4-4-2 with Costa and Batshuayi, and I think he might quite suit that and revel in that. And certainly under Conte, if any manager is going to motivate you to perform your best, then Conte is probably it. So those would be my picks for you to keep your eye on over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, I heard it here first. And in the absence of Drew and Tom from the Spanish and the German side of things, I can't do them full justice. So I'll let them do that in their own time. But a couple that sort of leap off the page, I look at sort of Hector Bellerin, obviously of Arsenal. For Spain, I would expect him to come through. Also Morata to continue his progress. I think Lucas Vazquez, who people don't realise is actually 25. At the forward at Real Madrid, I think he's potentially going to step on for Spain. Other than that, I'm looking at there's a few talented youngsters at Spain, but maybe haven't made that breakthrough yet. So I'll have to defer to Tom on that one. And then Germany-wise, I guess it's the obvious one. Sane is certainly one that leaps off the page. Julian Draxler's only 22. Kimmich, we've praised obviously on this pod before and tonight indeed. Are they ever going to find a centre forward? That's the question. German centre forwards. They're very, very rare.
Kevin Volland?
So, Kevin Volland, that's the one I think Drew said is likely to be, a lot of eggs put in that Volland-shaped basket. Yeah. So, yes, we shall see. I think Sane's the one that everyone's impressed by. And, of course, Mario Götze, some people forget, is still only 24.
Oh, little Augustus Gloop.
Yes, indeed. Who is apparently soon to become a Dortmund player once again. So, apparently they're in advanced negotiations with Bayern Munich to bring him back. So that worked out well, didn't it? Still, okay. Well, that's good. Thank you very much. The only other name I was going to chuck at you, Rich, just because it's my podcast and I can do what I like. So I wanted to just ask you whether you think Clement Lenglet is potentially a name that people should keep an eye on with France, because I know he's very young and very raw, but I'd love watching him. I just wonder if he's going to be too early for this French side with all their centre-backs they've got coming through.
Short answer is yes. I think he probably will be too early, but this is the season to keep an eye out on him. Plays for Nancy, has had a number of games for the under-21s, always looks really good for them. Has had a couple of really good seasons for Nancy in League 2. They got promoted last season, so this is the season. If people want to keep an eye out on perhaps the next generation of players, then he is certainly one of a number of players at Nancy. And Nancy themselves are probably a team to keep an eye out on, because there's arguably 3 really, really good young players that will be playing for them next season. So, but Lenglet is probably one to keep an eye out on. Really strong centre-back for a relatively young age. So keep an eye out on Nancy. I'm not going to say that they're going to do well. They're newly promoted side, but some really good young players there. You've got Lenglet. There's a midfielder called Arnaud Lusamba, and then Ike Benassa, who's a really exciting attacking player who was signed by Monaco in the summer, but has been loaned back to Nancy. So 3 really exciting young players there, but all 3 not for this generation. Maybe perhaps give them 2-3 seasons, but certainly at this stage 3 to perhaps just keep at the back of your mind.
Yes, yeah, that's me going full hipster there, but I couldn't resist because had the opportunity. And John, make a note. I'm sure we'll be doing plenty of hipsters' choices next year, so there'll be a distinct French flavour a couple of times, I think. Right, okay, we will draw a line there then. In that case, it's been really, really good discussion, and really, really good to have you 3 on this evening. And as I say, Ali will return. I know he's gutted to have missed out on the chat today, so he will be back. And just before we leave you, we will look ahead to what we've got coming up, because we're going to take a little bit of a break now, because we're all tired, and frankly, John is sick of me asking him to edit stuff. So we're going to take a little break for a couple of weeks. But John, we had our winner for the fantasy football. So if you just want to give him one more bit of praise, 'cause I'm sure he's listening. He was what was his Twitter handle in again?
It is at Camusdinho. So he's known as Jabroni Ellsbury on Twitter, but yeah, at Camusdinho. So he won by 4. I think it was just 4 points in the end. It was a very close run thing, but very impressive. Very impressive performance in the fantasy football. And Tom is looking in the cupboard. We are going to find find the prize.
Yes,
don't worry.
It's a bit like going live off of the 80s, where they literally do look in a cupboard to find something that somebody doesn't want. But yes, stay tuned. So we know, I believe he's in the US of A. So,
yes, he is. Phoenix, I think. Yes, Phoenix.
So what we might do is just send him a postcard, because it'll be cheaper. No, we're not that tight. We will send you something. We'll find you something. Right, so coming up, Rich, I'm going to drag another hour or so out of your time, I think, in the coming weeks to sit down with you and talk about the Ligue 1, maybe touch a little bit of Ligue 2 as well if we get the time, the season ahead. So I think you and I are going to try and set something up in sort of early August, I think I'm right in saying, if that's all right with you.
Of course, yeah, no, looking forward to that.
Fantastic. So we shall do that. Simon, we were talking pre-pod. We're going to try and get you and Ali together to do a bit of an Anglo-Scottish preview of the season. So we'll try and work that out. So we might even get Ross involved as well, so we can cram a bit of championship into that. So you will be back, I trust.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Looking forward to that.
Splendid. John, you and I have had some news. The lovely Mina Rizuki is going to join us again for another little chatter about all things Serie A. So we're very much looking forward to that. Again, I think that's going to be kind of early August, because obviously Mina's a busy lady. So we're going to get that in the diary soon.
Very excited to hear her pronounce anything with the Italian accent.
Oh, she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. We do love Mina, and for someone so busy, she's so polite. It's an absolute joy to have her. So she will be back, and I think we're also working on a few other things. I know that Lana wants to have another little rant on France, so I'm going to sit down with Lana at some point with the ear defenders on and let her go for gold on what didn't happen in the Euros. So we'll probably get another interview sorted with her. And I know that Tom is working with, I think, is it John Driscoll? John?
Yes.
For a Spanish preview, and Drew is working hard to get somebody for a German preview. I think he's chatting to Ross Dunbar. I think he's chatting to from the Bundesliga show. So we're going to try and work that out as well. So there's plenty to come. So if you haven't already, do click that subscribe button on our YouTube page. If you just look up Football Hipsters on YouTube, and indeed the old subscribe button on iTunes, as that's working well at the moment. That's all fixed. If you get really bored, feel free, download our daily podcast during the Euros and just listen to how wrong we were. Isn't that right, John?
I think I got pretty much every prediction wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I got most. I think I said Anthony Martial could be the player of the tournament. That worked out well.
I said Gerard Piqué, so yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, well, if you want to laugh at us, then please do go and listen to those. But that is it for tonight, and indeed that is it for technically for the summer, for the season. We'll be back in August with the things we just mentioned. Do keep it tuned. We're at the FH Podcast if you want to give us a follow. We have set up a Facebook page which you can give a like. Not going to lie, there's nothing on it at the moment. It's just our banner and a few bits and bobs. But as of next season, we're going to post our episodes on there as well. So do give us a little like. All right, just remains to be said to thank my guests for this evening. So once again, thank you very much firstly to Rich. Thank you, Rich.
No, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Always a pleasure, and thank you very much, Simon.
No problem. Thanks so much, mate.
Literally stepped off a plane for us. That's commitment. And also thank you, John, for stepping in at very short notice to become the English version of Ali. So thank you very much, John.
Well, I thought it was a pleasure. The English version of Ali. I think you might have insulted him then. I'm not sure Scotsmen would appreciate that.
No, true. I'll take that back. Thank you anyway. Right, so that has been the Football Hipsters podcast. Once again, thank you very, very much to everyone who's listened to us over the summer. We have definitely increased our listenership, and you're all very, very welcome to join us next season. Plenty of football on the horizon. Pre-season is underway. We'll soon be back. So thank you very much for tuning in. We will speak to you very soon. I've been your host, Kris. Enjoy your couple of weeks off, and tune in again for more during pre-season.